Thank you so much, Elena. That was fascinating, and it's one of the great pluses of dealing with the recent past is we still have people that worked on the buildings to tell stories. And in fact, Joy Podkus, who was the city council member at the time this building was built, there's Joy, had a story about when it first opened, they didn't have money to pay for the fire hydrant, so she actually got it waived in the city council. So it's all these little stories that make history come alive. So we are now going to start our presentation. I want to introduce our panel moderator who will be guiding us through the suburbs of today's discussion. He is well-known and well-respected architecture critic and author and has written 19 books on modern architecture and urbanism in the mid-20th century. He's been involved in the preservation of several post-war structures. Most recently, on behalf of the Conservancy and its Modern Committee, he wrote the successful Historic Cultural Monument nomination for Johnny's Coffee Shop on Wilshire Boulevard. Yay! He has been a great friend to the Conservancy for many years. Please welcome Alan Hess.
Thank you. You can imagine how exciting it is for me to be here with all of you, but in the valley, in the middle of suburbia, and in a John Lautner building. A great confluence of great events. We have a great presentation this morning. The Pacific Standard Time presents programs that have been going on for the last several months have opened up a lot of new information about Los Angeles, and it's information which has been needed for a long time. Thank goodness it is coming out, but we still have a lot that we need to chew over and digest and understand what it all means, because we are developing, we should be developing, in my opinion, a new perspective on what this suburban metropolis is all about. It was a new type of city built on a scale never before imagined. But it also has, it wasn't entirely new, it has deep roots in history. And that's part of what we're going to get into today. So I'm hoping that this discussion will continue on into the future, that we're only going to be able to scratch the surface. LA has been so misunderstood and mythologized over the years. Just the simple word tract burger, for example, it implies a whole sense of what the valley, the housing, the people, the lifestyle, the history of suburbia is all about. And it isn't always accurate. It's a myth, often. But what we're what we have today, and which I'm just really excited about, is we have three experts who have done basic research, who have not accepted conventional wisdom or opinions about suburbia, but have actually gone out, looked at what was there, researched it, documented, found out what actually went on. And not only in terms of individual buildings, but also in terms of patterns of growth, evolution, development. What is the logic? What is going on here? And I think that it's just absolutely a crucial question for especially a city like Los Angeles, but other cities as well, to address based upon facts, documented facts of what actually happened. Again, not myth, but facts. And that's what what we have in store for us today. I'm going to introduce all three of them, and then they will come up individually to give their presentations. But as I said, I've admired all of these three people's work for many, many years. It's helped me, certainly, in my work on Los Angeles and architecture in the 20th century. Our first speaker is going to be Robert Brueggemann, who is from Chicago, and that's an important thing because Los Angeles is not the only city that has undergone this growth. As I said, this history has deep roots elsewhere as well, and Bob, coming from Chicago, has a lot of perspective for us here in Los Angeles. He is Professor Emeritus of Art History, Architecture, and Urban Planning at the University of Illinois at Chicago. Specifically for this program, he is the author of a great book, which will be for sale outside afterwards, called Sprawl, A Compact History. And it gets away from polemic and it has wonderful perspectives. He's also written quite a number of other books that I do recommend. The Architects in the City, Halliburton and Roach of Chicago, 1880 to 1918. Halliburton and Roach were kind of the Welton Beckett, William Pereira, and A.C. Martin rolled into one for that period, just to give you some perspective. He's also a historian of modernism. He wrote Modernism at Mid-Century, which is a history of the United States Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs, a really great insight into that building. He's also the author of The Architecture of Harry Weiss. Harry Weiss is one of those architects who was extremely prominent and then kind of faded from favor over the years. Bob's book helps to bring that back. He's now working on a book called Modernism in Chicago Between the Wars, and it includes and incorporates what we call the Art Deco into the modern movement, which I think is particularly appropriate for us here in Los Angeles with our great Art Deco buildings. After Bob, we're going to have DJ Waldy come and give us his comments. He is, of course, the author of a tremendously important book, Holy Land, a Suburban Memoir, but he's also written Where We Are Now, Notes from Los Angeles, and other books about Southern California. He's the author with Diane Keaton of 2 architectural studies, California Romantica and House. And a review of House in the New York Times praised his gorgeous distillation of architectural and social history. He writes for Los Angeles Magazine, contributing editor for the Los Angeles Times. His essays on history and politics in Los Angeles County appear weekly at KCET's website, kcet.org. But perhaps more importantly, he's a lifelong resident of Lakewood, and he was the deputy city manager of Lakewood for nearly 32 years as Lakewood's public information officer, again, giving us a perspective from the ground, not from, jetting in from the East Coast or polemics, but from the ground. What was it like to live in these places? Our third speaker is also, I'm glad to say, a native of the San Fernando Valley. But he's taken that farther. He has written Wilshire Boulevard, Grand Concourse of Los Angeles, and San Fernando Valley, America's Suburb. Again, giving us a very strong, insightful, journalistic documentation of these 2 important aspects of the suburban metropolis, Wilshire Boulevard and the San Fernando Valley. He is also the editor of LA Observed, a weekly regular on KCRW, and a writer whose work has appeared in Smithsonian, Los Angeles, Dwell, LA Architect, and the Los Angeles Times. He has also been involved, also very importantly, with the LA Planning Department's Survey LA, in specifically giving his insights into the Valley, so that the Valley is being well represented in that historic survey of historic Los Angeles. So I think that's probably enough for me right now. We will have a chance for some questions afterwards. I'd just like to thank the Conservancy for putting this on. The Conservancy has been aware of the importance of these issues about suburbia for 30 years now. I just realized that it was 1983 that we nominated the oldest McDonald's out in Downey for the National Register of Historic Places 30 years ago. And it was 30 years ago at that time. It opened, in fact, August 18th, 1953, when the 60th anniversary is coming up in a couple of weeks. But the Conservancy has been on this issue. We still need to spread this, get this idea out there, not only in Los Angeles, but across the country, which is why it's so good that we have Bob Brugman's perspective today. So I will stop talking and introduce Bob Brugman right now. Thank you.